Hey everyone, Damo here. Want to have a chat today, or a quick chat today about some new shoes that I've purchased. So I went down, got myself some S-Works Ares or however you pronounce it, A-R-E-S. So went down to V1 Cycle down to Wellington Point. Zach and Steve down there hooked me up with these bad boys Wednesday. Today's Friday, so it's the first chance I've had to have a look at them and take them for a ride. So I set them up with some cleats last night whilst I had a couple of beers, and believe it or not, the cleats are actually half straight, so kudos to me. So I bought the S-Works in black to replace my outgoing, or hopefully to replace my outgoing legs. And I'm not 100% sure, I'll stand corrected, these are like the CX 403 or something like that. These lakes were the custom fit carbon sole, heat moldable, so I had heated them a couple of times and had heated them up a couple of times, and were pretty comfy, pretty well suited to my foot. These were in a 44.5, so they are a wide, a lake wide, and I went in the S-Works, I dropped back to a 44 drop the wide. So that was, I'll tell you about that in a minute. So just before I talk about the S-Works, the reason why I'm replacing or looking to replace my legs was mainly because I've been getting a bit of pain or a bit of issue in one of my feet, and I was looking to swap out these. I've had them for over 12 months. They've been a fantastic shoe, really stiff, but I just want to see if I can maybe try to isolate or remove that foot pain I've been getting. So hence the reason I'm replacing the legs. So onto the S-Works. First of all, these are not cheap. These are retail for $575, so they're not a cheap shoe. So in saying that, I dare say, as with most S-Works products, whether or not it's their bikes or their apparel, they're hitting a pretty specific target audience. So if you're buying these, I think you're in the market for a certain type of quality and a certain level of performance. These, a quick search on their website will tell you that they're really marketing these at sprinters, or pretty much marketing these at sprinters, and I'd say that's really, reasonably evident by the fact that they've done some development with Sam Bennett to develop this shoe. It's got the Dynamo inner, which is essentially like a sock lining part of the shoe. I've had them in football boots for a while. I know they're pretty common in some running shoes and some other types of shoes. Relatively uncommon from what I can see in cycling shoes. There are some, but it's not widespread. They use a 2-boa system to tension, and they've got a patent pending system for, I don't know how well that's going to pick up on the camera, which is almost like a triathlon shoe. It's got a double flap at the top, one with the main flap that comes over top. It's quite narrow around the outside of the ankle, and then widens over the top of the foot, as it cinches over into that boa. And then the second one, which is over the, I don't know what you'd like to call that, but just near the metatarsal, so to speak, behind the metatarsal at the top of the foot, it's just a second boa there. Same sort of 2-flap system, but it's wider at the outside of the foot on both sides, and then narrows in just with essentially a boa that we've seen on many other style of shoes. From what I experienced with these today, the boas are as effective as any boas are. I think, although these don't look fantastic, I think they're not the greatest looking sort of system, I would say. That's just my personal opinion. Others may have a different one. I don't dislike them, but I don't love them. They tend to work well. It feels like the tension is fairly well evenly spread over the top of the foot through that boa system. It's hard. On this side here, it's got where the boas go down, the cables go down, it goes onto 2 different points, one up near the inside of the ankle and one down more near the midfoot, which I would imagine, or it seems to do a good job of more evenly distributing that pressure that you're putting on there. Out of the box, the first thing I noticed with these, I want to talk about quickly, is the cleat. So I run a Look Cleo cleat, These pair up with my Favero Asioma pedals, power pedals. So I run these on my Lakes and I run these on these. They're a compatible pedal. One thing I noticed straight away between the Lakes and the S-Works is that the cleat on the S-Works sits back further towards the underside of your foot, sits back further to the back of your foot, more under the ball. And I've got my very technical prop here, and you can actually see it when you get the shoes side by side. And I just put the cleat on the underside, put the cleat on the top edge of the box head, and you can see that the difference between the heel there of the shoe and the toe. So the S-Works, generally the whole shoe is up further, so meaning that the cleat is more underneath. And I've got those positioned as far forward as I can. Might not affect some people, worry some people, but for myself, I have a fairly square foot, so my first metatarsal through to my fifth metatarsal is quite a small margin. So I don't have a lot of margin for error when it comes to putting in my cleats, as opposed to some other people who might have a more pronounced or a bigger gap there to work with. Probably have a little bit more scope to pull that back underneath and have a little bit more adjustment. So with these, I've got them, as you can see, I've got them all the way forward, and they definitely felt different. So I know they're a different brand of shoe, but they definitely felt different in that position. So I'm going to see how that plays out. They're marketed as being super stiff and made for sprinting, and loss of power, no lateral roll or lateral movement of the foot. So when I rode on them today, I did a couple of hours on them today. They are very stiff, there's no doubt about that. But to be honest, coming from the Lakes, which are an incredibly stiff shoe, onto another shoe which is claiming to be super stiff, I didn't notice any real difference when it comes to actually separating the sole, so to speak, of the two shoes. They both felt super stiff. So I know Specialized and S-Works have developed their stiffness rating. I personally, and this is purely my personal opinion, I don't put a lot of emphasis on it. This has a stiffness index of 15 as opposed to some of their other shoes which have like an 11 and a 12. It's an in-house stiffness rating, is my understanding. It's, the stiffness rating in this doesn't cross over to a Lake or to a Shimano shoe. So for the average punter like myself, who races and social rides, I'm not going to harp on and say this shoe's super stiff and you should buy it, because I don't notice a difference. What I did notice is the Dyneema insert, or the Dyneema sock in this. This shoe is super comfortable. There's absolutely no doubt about that. When you have a look at I'll just, for example, and I'll hold these two up because one, I can talk about the Lake fairly well, but also I suppose they're fairly comparable in level of quality of their shoe. You know, they're both marketed to be a stiff sprinter shoe. So you can see that the S-Works definitely on face value appears to be very much smaller. It's a lot slimmer and it's a lot more streamlined. I don't know what the Lakes weigh, but you can feel that they're actually heavier. So these aren't the lightest shoe kicking about. They're not marketed as the lightest shoe kicking about though either. I threw these on the scales. They claim to be 220 grams each in a size 42 on the S-Works website. At a size 44, I weighed the pair at 530 grams, which is, take that as you will. With the cleats on, that adds another 70 grams for a pair, so adds another 35 grams a shoe. So they're not the world's lightest shoe, and I was made acutely aware of that when I put it up on the group chat with the mates, and one of the boys was very quick to flick me back a set of his lace-up Giros that come in at 398 grams, 398 grams, so 100 odd grams lighter basically. So they're not the lightest shoe, but let's face it, most of us are carrying a few extra kilos, myself included, so an extra 50 grams isn't going to make a massive difference. So if you jump online, like I did before I bought these, I had read a few reviews. Everyone was speaking fairly highly of the comfort of the shoe. Both customers and some of the shop write-ups or the magazine write-ups I read. I can say after wearing them, they are very comfortable. So the sock is very, I don't know if it'll loosen up over time, but it's a very snug fit to get your foot into. and it does a fantastic job around the heel support here, right down through to the right down through the midfoot, I'd say, of the shoe, to provide a lot of stability and a lot of comfort there. It really hugs your foot, not to the point that it applied any sort of undue pressure or caused any issue, but it was very firm, very comfortable, and very it had absolutely no sort of slop or wiggle room. The heel support did a great job of cupping the heel nicely without putting any pressure on my heel. So it felt really, really good, even though when you look at it compared to some of the other shoes, it's higher in the ankle here, comes up higher onto the ankle, but I didn't feel like the sock caused any pressure or anything where your ankle hinges. In fact, to be honest, I think it felt better than my Lakes do, where they seem to, on the front of my ankle, maybe give a little bit of discomfort sometimes. Even though these are seem to be higher all around, they were a better fit, and that could be to do with, I suppose, the flexibility of that inside sock. So I think it's really good. It's a narrower shoe. Like I said, I dropped back from a 44.5 in the wide to a 44, and it looks like a narrower shoe, but it felt like I had more than enough room in the toe box. It didn't feel like an issue at all. There wasn't a point where there was any movement or any excess room, but it felt roomy. So I was a little bit apprehensive about dropping back from a wide to a standard sort of 44, and I don't have any regrets in that at all. In fact, it fits quite nicely. In saying that, I don't have an overly wide foot or pencil style foot, but it was good. So they've done a good job of retaining some of the space in the toe box there and giving that bit of freedom, especially to give you room, that little bit of room, and whilst also providing a heap of stability and a heap of comfort up around the ankle and around the forefoot. The top of the foot, midfoot there. I read again in some of the other reviews there was some talk about really being able to crank on the tension with the boas and not provide any discomfort. So I did put that to the test today. Just gave them a really firm nudge up just to see. Sometimes when I have found sometimes with boas, if you over tension them, it can provide sort of some narrow strips of pressure or narrower strips of pressure that over time don't feel that great. I cranked these on, left them cranked on for the whole ride, and didn't experience any discomfort around that. So I thought they've done a good job of I suppose, distributing that pressure over the system that they've created there. A couple of things that I've noticed. So I'll wait and see how it pans out, as in if my shoe, if it feels a bit better, and whether or not I get used to that cleat placement. That's probably caused me a little bit of discomfort under the bottom of my foot, under the ball of my foot. Not enough that I think it would affect performance, but for a $575 shoe, I suppose I was expecting a little bit more, a little bit better fit than that. And I don't think at that sort of price point it's unreasonable to expect a good shoe out of the box. Secondly, within about 3 minutes of being down the road, I noticed that these shoes did not, to me, feel very ventilated. It's not a hot day at all today, and I fairly immediately noticed that I wasn't getting a lot of airflow through the shoe, which I'm a bit more used to. So, in saying that, my foot wasn't getting hot, but it's autumn, it's Easter time in Queensland, so it's not very warm at the moment. Come December, January, when it's 38, 39 degrees and 1,000% humidity, I'm not sure how these are going to go. I think they actually might not be the best shoes for that time of year. I'll stand corrected, and I'm happy to sort of continue to sort of test them out. But yes, they didn't feel, I personally didn't feel like they provided the level of ventilation in Queensland that we need from a shoe. And once again, for $575, and you might be splitting hairs, but I don't think it's unreasonable at that price point. So all in all, not too bad. I can see why they're being rated really highly. I jumped up, did some little sprints through them, nothing outrageous. Obviously, my shoes are never going to even come close to experiencing the power that Sam Bennett put through his, but they felt good. They provide a good platform. I really was impressed though with that ankle support, and that I found that it just, when you're up out of the saddle in general, it provides a lot of support and stops any sort of movement or lateral roll all up through that ankle down into midfoot, and whilst retaining that sort of little bit of freedom in the toe box. So I did like that. I think that was a nice touch. So all in all, I think they're a pretty decent shoe. Yeah, and I'm hoping that they bed in a little bit, and I think that if you're looking for something that is not cheap for starters, if you're prepared to pay the coin, then you probably would be well worth considering these. The only another thing that I think is a little bit poor is they come in a black with the silver writing down the side. They come in a white, which I think would be a nightmare to keep clean, and they come in a red and black combo. Supply's been pretty rubbish at the moment, as everybody knows, with bike stuff, and this is no exception. I think the colours, they could probably do a bit more to, capture more of the market by improving some of the colour combinations available. I don't particularly want just a straight black shoe, but in saying that, I don't want a candy apple red shoe either. So, yeah, I think maybe expand the colours would be nice, but all in all, it is what it is. And if you're considering buying a shoe, hopefully this has helped you out a little bit. And if it has, give me a thumbs up and share the video. If not, well, don't give me a thumbs up, don't share the video. Thanks guys, until next time, I'll catch you later.